He was just an ordinary prosthetics technician, until his new client asked for a hidden compartment in his prosthetic leg during the fitting. His 10 years of military experience told him one thing. This man was planning to hide a weapon, and now he had become an unwitting accomplice in an assassin's plan. But before we dive into this incredible story, if you're new here, welcome to The Last Witness. We share the most amazing untold stories of ordinary people with extraordinary secrets. Stories where someone becomes the final witness to incredible events. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. And if you enjoy this story, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us continue bringing you these incredible tales. Now let's get back to Michael's story. Michael Torres had been running advanced prosthetic solutions in Phoenix, Arizona for 8 years. To his clients, he was simply a skilled craftsman who understood both the technical challenges of creating custom prosthetic limbs and the emotional journey that came with adapting to life after limb loss. What made Michael unique in his field wasn't just his technical expertise. It was his personal understanding of what his clients were going through. Michael knew firsthand the physical pain, the psychological adjustment, and the daily challenges of living with a prosthetic limb because he lived with one himself. The IED explosion that changed Michael's life happened on a dusty road outside Kandahar, Afghanistan, in March 2012. Sergeant Michael Torres had been leading a patrol when their convoy hit a buried explosive device. The blast killed 2 of his men instantly and left Michael with traumatic injuries to his right leg that ultimately required amputation below the knee. Michael's military career had spanned 10 years, during which he'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq as part of an Army Rangers unit. He'd been trained in advanced combat techniques, weapon systems, explosives handling, and tactical operations. His service record was exemplary. He'd earned 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. But none of that mattered when he woke up in a military hospital in Germany and learned that his leg was gone. The physical rehabilitation was grueling, but the psychological adjustment was even harder. Michael had defined himself through his physical capabilities for his entire adult life. Suddenly, he had to relearn basic tasks like walking, running, and maintaining his balance. Simple activities that he'd taken for granted became daily challenges that required planning and adaptation. The military provided excellent medical care and fitted Michael with a state-of-the-art prosthetic leg. But the device they gave him was designed for basic functionality, not for the active lifestyle that Michael was determined to maintain. The prosthetic was heavy, uncomfortable, and limited his mobility in ways that frustrated him daily. During his recovery, Michael became fascinated with prosthetic technology and began researching the field extensively. He learned about different materials, attachment systems, and design approaches. He discovered that most prosthetics were designed by engineers who had never actually used the devices they created, leading to products that were technically sophisticated but practically inadequate. Michael decided that when he left the military, he would dedicate his life to creating better prosthetic devices for other amputees. He used his GI Bill benefits to study biomedical engineering and prosthetics technology, learning both the theoretical foundations and practical skills needed to design and manufacture custom prosthetic limbs. In 2016, Michael opened Advanced Prosthetic Solutions in a converted warehouse in Phoenix. His business model was different from most prosthetics companies. Instead of focusing on mass production and insurance reimbursements, Michael specialized in custom devices designed specifically for each client's unique needs and lifestyle. Michael's clients included military veterans like himself, civilian amputees who had lost limbs in accidents or due to medical conditions, and athletes who needed specialized prosthetics for competitive sports. Each device Michael created was a work of art and engineering, designed not just to restore function, but to enhance his client's quality of life. The work was deeply meaningful to Michael. Every prosthetic he created represented someone's journey back to independence and confidence. He'd worked with a marathon runner who needed a leg designed for long-distance running, a musician who needed a prosthetic arm that could hold instruments, and a construction worker who needed a device that could withstand the demands of physical labor. Michael's reputation in the prosthetics community grew steadily. He was featured in medical journals for his innovative designs and was invited to speak at conferences about user-centered prosthetic development. Other prosthetists referred their most challenging cases to him. But Michael's most important qualification wasn't his technical skill or professional recognition. It was his ability to understand what his clients were experiencing emotionally. He could recognize the anger, frustration, and grief that accompanied limb loss because he'd felt all of those emotions himself. That personal understanding made Michael exceptionally good at reading people. During initial consultations, he could tell which clients were struggling with acceptance, which ones were pushing themselves too hard during recovery, and which ones needed encouragement versus realistic expectations about their prosthetic devices. Michael's ability to read people extended beyond emotional states to behavioral patterns. His military training had taught him to assess threats and recognize when someone's stated intentions didn't match their actual behavior. Those skills served him well in business, helping him identify clients who might not follow proper care instructions or who had unrealistic expectations about their prosthetics. But Michael had never encountered a client like Vincent Kane. Kane called Michael's office in October 2023, explaining that he needed a custom prosthetic leg to replace one he'd lost in a motorcycle accident 6 months earlier. Kane said he was dissatisfied with the device he'd received from his previous prosthetist and wanted something more sophisticated and better fitted. The story was plausible. Michael frequently worked with clients who were seeking upgrades from basic prosthetics to more advanced devices. Kane's initial consultation seemed routine. He was polite, well-informed about prosthetic technology, and willing to pay Michael's premium rates for a fully custom device. Kane appeared to be in his early 40s with the lean build and alert demeanor of someone who maintained excellent physical fitness. He claimed to work in private security, which explained his obvious comfort with physical challenges and his specific requirements for a prosthetic that could handle demanding activities. During the initial consultation, Kane was knowledgeable about different prosthetic designs and materials. He asked intelligent questions about carbon fiber construction, microprocessor-controlled knee joints, and advanced attachment systems. His questions suggested that he'd done extensive research and understood the technical aspects of prosthetic design. But something about Kane made Michael uncomfortable, though he couldn't initially identify what was triggering his instincts. Kane's medical documentation appeared legitimate. He had x-rays showing the amputation site, medical records from his initial surgery, and insurance information that checked out when Michael's office verified it. Kane's amputation was below the knee, similar to Michael's own injury, which should have made the case straightforward. However, during the physical examination and measurement process, Michael noticed several details that didn't quite fit with Kane's stated history. First, Kane's amputation site showed healing patterns that were inconsistent with a traumatic motorcycle accident. Michael had seen hundreds of amputation sites caused by different types of injuries, and he could usually tell whether an amputation was the result of trauma, disease, or surgical intervention. Kane's amputation appeared to be surgical rather than traumatic, suggesting that his leg had been removed in a controlled medical procedure rather than lost in an accident. Second, Kane's physical conditioning was extraordinary, far beyond what Michael would expect from someone 6 months post-amputation. Most recent amputees were still building strength and endurance in their remaining muscles. Kane showed muscle development and balance that suggested years of experience with prosthetic devices. Third, Kane's behavior during the consultation was subtly wrong. He was too comfortable with the measurement process, too familiar with prosthetic terminology, and too specific about features he wanted included in his device. Recent amputees typically needed extensive education about their options. Kane seemed to know exactly what he wanted before the consultation began. Michael's military training had taught him to trust his instincts when something felt wrong, even if he couldn't articulate exactly what was triggering his concerns. Kane set off every internal alarm that Michael had developed during his years in combat zones. But Michael's professional obligations required him to provide services to any client who could pay and had legitimate medical needs. Kane's documentation appeared valid, and his requests weren't unreasonable. Michael decided to proceed with the prosthetic fabrication while remaining alert to any additional concerning behavior. The red flags became impossible to ignore during Kane's second appointment, when they discussed specific design requirements for his prosthetic. Kane's initial requests had been standard. He wanted a lightweight device with advanced shock absorption and a knee joint that could handle athletic activities. But as they discussed details, Kane began asking about modifications that had nothing to do with normal prosthetic function. "I need a small storage compartment built into the lower leg section," Kane said casually. "Something secure that won't interfere with the device's operation." Michael paused in his note-taking. "A storage compartment? What kind of storage are you thinking about?" "Just a small space where I can keep important items secure," Kane replied. "Emergency cash, medications, that sort of thing." The request wasn't completely unreasonable. Some amputees did ask for small storage spaces in their prosthetics for medical supplies or personal items, but Kane's specific requirements raised immediate concerns. "I'll need the compartment to be completely sealed and undetectable," Kane continued, "and it should have a locking mechanism that can't be opened accidentally." Michael's military training kicked in. Kane wasn't describing storage for medications or emergency cash. He was describing a hidden compartment designed to conceal something from detection by security systems or law enforcement. "What kind of items are you planning to store?" Michael asked directly. Kane studied Michael for a moment before answering. "Personal protection items. I work in high-risk environments where I might need to carry equipment that could be problematic if discovered during security screenings." Michael felt his blood pressure rising. Kane was asking him to build a prosthetic device designed to smuggle weapons or other contraband through metal detectors and security checkpoints. "Mr. Kane," Michael said carefully, "I need to understand exactly what you're planning to carry in this compartment." Kane's demeanor shifted subtly. The polite professional client facade fell away, replaced by something colder and more calculating. "Let's just say it's a specialized tool of my trade," Kane said. "Nothing that would hurt innocent people, but something I need to have available in certain situations." Michael realized he was being asked to become an accessory to what was almost certainly criminal activity. Kane wasn't just a security professional with unusual requirements. He was someone who needed to smuggle weapons or other dangerous items past security measures. Michael's mind raced through the possibilities. Kane could be planning anything from corporate espionage to assassination. The hidden compartment he was requesting could conceal guns, knives, explosives, or electronic surveillance equipment. But Michael also realized that he was in a dangerous position. If Kane was indeed a professional criminal, confronting him directly could put Michael's life at risk. Kane had specifically sought out Michael's services, which suggested that he'd researched Michael's background and capabilities. Michael decided to probe further, while being careful not to reveal his suspicions. "I understand the need for discretion in security work," Michael said, "but I have professional liability concerns about creating devices that might be used to circumvent security measures." Kane leaned forward slightly. "What if I told you that my work involves national security? That the equipment I need to carry is authorized by government agencies? Then you'd be able to provide official documentation of that authorization," Michael replied. Kane smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Unfortunately, the nature of my work doesn't allow for conventional documentation." Michael knew he was being manipulated. Kane was using classic psychological techniques to make Michael feel like he was being recruited for patriotic service rather than criminal conspiracy. "Mr. Kane, I need to be direct with you," Michael said. "I'm not comfortable creating a prosthetic device designed to conceal weapons or other contraband. That's not the kind of work I do." Kane's expression hardened. "That's disappointing, Mr. Torres. I was hoping we could work together on this project. I'm happy to create a standard prosthetic device for you," Michael offered, "but without the hidden compartment." Kane stood up from his chair and looked down at Michael. "I think there might be some misunderstanding about what I'm asking for. Maybe you should reconsider your position." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Michael felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that he remembered from combat situations. His training told him to remain calm while assessing the threat level and planning his response. "I don't think there's any misunderstanding," Michael said, also standing. "You're asking me to help you smuggle contraband, and I'm declining to do so." Kane studied Michael for a long moment. Michael could see Kane evaluating him, weighing his options, deciding whether Michael represented a threat that needed to be eliminated or simply an obstacle that could be bypassed. You know, Kane said finally, I did some research on you before coming here. Decorated combat veteran, impressive service record, exemplary reputation in the prosthetics community. It would be a shame if something happened to damage that reputation. Michael felt anger rising in his chest. Kane was now threatening not just Michael's safety, but his livelihood and professional standing. Are you threatening me, Mr. Kane? I'm simply pointing out that you have a lot to lose, Kane replied. Your business, your reputation, your personal safety. It would be much easier for everyone if you simply provided the services I'm requesting. Michael had faced down armed insurgents in Afghanistan. He wasn't going to be intimidated by a criminal making veiled threats in his own workshop. Get out, Michael said quietly. Kane smiled again. I'll give you some time to think about it. But I will need an answer soon. Kane left the workshop, but Michael knew the confrontation wasn't over. Kane had invested time and effort in approaching Michael specifically, which meant he wasn't likely to simply find another prosthetist. More concerning, Kane had made it clear that he viewed Michael as either an asset to be exploited or a threat to be neutralized. Michael spent the rest of the day thinking about his options. His first instinct was to contact law enforcement, but he wasn't sure what crimes Kane had actually committed. Asking for a hidden compartment in a prosthetic device wasn't necessarily illegal, and Kane had been careful not to explicitly state that he planned to use it for criminal purposes. Michael also had to consider the possibility that Kane's threats weren't empty. If Kane was indeed involved in professional criminal activity, he might have the resources and motivation to follow through on his intimidation attempts. But Michael's military training had taught him that the best defense against threats was often a strong offense. Instead of waiting for Kane to escalate the situation, Michael decided to gather intelligence and take control of the narrative. Michael used his contacts in the veteran community to research Kane's background. What he discovered was disturbing. Vincent Kane was a known associate of several individuals who had been investigated for arms trafficking and international weapons smuggling. Kane himself had never been convicted of any crimes, but he'd been questioned in connection with several federal investigations. More concerning, Michael learned that Kane had approached at least 2 other prosthetists in different states with similar requests. One had agreed to create the device Kane wanted. That prosthetist had died in what appeared to be a random mugging 3 weeks later. Michael realized he was dealing with someone who was not just criminally involved, but willing to use lethal force to protect his operations. Michael made the decision to contact the FBI. Special Agent Lisa Patel met with Michael the next day at his workshop. Michael explained Kane's request and the research he'd conducted about Kane's background. Agent Patel was immediately interested. Mr. Torres, we've been tracking Vincent Kane for over 2 years in connection with an international arms trafficking organization. The hidden compartment he's requesting from you would likely be used to smuggle weapon components or ammunition past security checkpoints. What kind of weapon components? Kane specializes in assassination equipment, Agent Patel explained. Ceramic knives that won't trigger metal detectors, poison delivery systems, compact explosive devices, the kind of equipment that professional killers use when they need to eliminate targets in secure environments. Michael felt sick as he realized how close he'd come to becoming an accessory to murder. We'd like to ask for your help, Agent Patel continued. We want you to agree to create the device Kane is requesting, but with modifications that will allow us to track his activities and gather evidence about his organization. Michael hesitated. You want me to help a professional killer obtain weapons? We want you to help us catch him before he kills anyone else, Agent Patel clarified. The device you create won't actually function as a weapon concealment system. Instead, it will contain tracking and recording equipment that will help us monitor Kane's activities and gather evidence about his associates. Michael agreed to cooperate with the FBI operation. Over the next week, he worked with federal technicians to create a prosthetic device that appeared to meet Kane's specifications, but actually contained sophisticated surveillance equipment instead of a hidden weapon compartment. When Kane returned for his final fitting, Michael presented him with a completed prosthetic. Kane examined the device carefully and tested the supposed hidden compartment, which appeared to function exactly as he'd requested. "Excellent work," Kane said as he strapped on the prosthetic and tested its fit. "This is exactly what I needed." Kane paid Michael's fee in cash and left with the device. Within hours, FBI surveillance teams were tracking his movements and recording his communications. The investigation that followed led to the arrest of Kane and 12 associates involved in an international assassination network. The evidence gathered through the surveillance equipment in Michael's prosthetic device revealed plans for multiple political assassinations and terrorist attacks across 3 countries. Kane's prosthetic device had been intended to smuggle ceramic weapons past security checkpoints at high-level political events. The FBI's intervention prevented what could have been a series of catastrophic attacks on government officials and civilian targets. During Kane's interrogation, he revealed that he had specifically targeted Michael because he believed a disabled veteran would be sympathetic to requests for assistance with specialized equipment. Kane had assumed that Michael's military background would make him willing to participate in what Kane portrayed as national security activities. Kane had also planned to eliminate Michael after receiving the prosthetic device, just as he had done with the previous prosthetist who had helped him. Michael's decision to contact the FBI had literally saved his own life while preventing multiple murders. Agent Patel called Michael after Kane's conviction to thank him for his cooperation. "Mr. Torres, your decision to trust your instincts and contact us prevented a significant terrorist attack." Kane's organization was planning to assassinate several world leaders at an upcoming international summit. Michael felt a mixture of pride and relief. His military training had served him well in civilian life, helping him recognize and respond to a threat that could have had devastating consequences. But the case also reinforced Michael's commitment to using his skills and experience to help people rather than harm them. Every prosthetic device he created represented someone's journey toward recovery and independence. He was determined never to let his work be corrupted by people who wanted to use it for violence. Michael continued to operate advanced prosthetic solutions, but with enhanced security measures and background screening procedures for new clients. He also began working as a consultant for law enforcement agencies, helping them understand how prosthetic devices and other medical equipment could be exploited by criminals. His experience with Kane led to changes in industry standards for prosthetic fabrication, including guidelines for recognizing and reporting suspicious requests for device modifications. Most importantly, Michael's work continued to transform the lives of amputees who needed not just functional prosthetics but devices that would restore their confidence and independence. On quiet evenings in his workshop, surrounded by the tools and materials of his trade, Michael often reflected on the path that had led him from combat soldier to prosthetics technician to unwitting federal informant. He'd lost his leg to an enemy explosive device, but that loss had led him to a career that allowed him to help others overcome similar challenges. His military training had prepared him to recognize threats and protect innocent people, skills that had proven just as valuable in civilian life as they had been in combat. The last witness to his own physical transformation had become the first line of defense against those who would exploit medical technology for violent purposes. It wasn't the military career Michael had planned, but it was meaningful work that honored both his service and his commitment to helping others. And that, he'd learned, was the best kind of mission anyone could have. Thank you for listening to this incredible story here on The Last Witness. If you enjoyed Michael's journey from wounded warrior to prosthetics expert to unlikely federal informant and want to hear more amazing tales of ordinary people who become the final witnesses to extraordinary events, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you these untold stories that deserve to be heard. What did you think about Michael's decision to help the FBI catch Kane? Do you believe people who have overcome personal challenges are better equipped to help others in similar situations? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your thoughts on these stories. And remember, sometimes the most important service we can provide comes not from our strongest moments, but from our experiences with overcoming adversity. Until next time, keep listening and keep witnessing the truth.